Recently, I've gotten back into learning a language, that being Japanese. I have taken Japanese as a subject since grade 7 all the way up to grade 12, but it's only until now that being graduated, I'm getting back into serious study. Because although school has a curriculum for learning a language, it's ultimately your own self study that will get you across to becoming more fluent and understanding the language more, or any language of that matter, because they have to fit it within a box. If you're part of the Australian curriculum of Japanese learning, they usually relate it to PACT, which is purpose, audience, context, tone, which is like deconstructing texts and relating it to questions. Like in real language learning, you would never have to do it for a test, like an academia test, unless you were going to like a Japanese university or something like that. But genuinely, learning a language is more like a hobby and a development of a skill, like learning an instrument. But the other day, I was looking up whether learning a language is self improvement, because it's within the scape. It seems like a bit of a waste of a time, because you can fundamentally break down self improvement into like fitness, health, relationships, wealth, finances, and then it's like, where does language fit in that? Genuinely, although you have to do the disciplined things, you can do disciplined things that you enjoy, and language learning is one of those things that I'm going back into, because there's a list of reasons. First is the Japanese language. I quite find it a beautiful language. The phonetic sounds, also its writing system, particularly kanji, which everyone boasts about. Oh, it has 3 alphabets. What? Like, why would you want to learn a language that has 3 alphabets? Like, once you learn the first 2 alphabets, which is hiragana and katakana, it's not that hard, because it's just drilling memory. It's like you memorize. It's like learning the English alphabet. You get to know like A's A, B's B, C, C, like etc. But then kanji, oh, that's the monster. That's the thing that most people are afraid learning Japanese in high school. But I've learnt, actually, if you see the book here by James Heisig, I'm not wearing my glasses, so I don't know if it's focused, but remembering the kanji one, James Heisig, he the method of learning kanji is through using imaginative memory rather than pure memory. And now at this point, I know like around, I think, 500 kanji, which is like, think of kanji as separate words. Like in the English language, you need to know about 1,000 words to understand and be fluent, or somewhat fluent. That's the same with Japanese. It's the same with any language. Part of my discipline for each day is learning the kanji, because we used a spaced repetition system, or SRS, usually Anki. And the spaced repetition system spaces out when we have to revise a flashcard, because if you revise a flashcard at the point you might forget it, you'll then remember it, and then that gets stored into long-term memory, and then it gets to a point where you only have to memorize flashcards or review them after a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, maybe until a decade, because you just remember it. Like, I haven't been doing kanji practice for, I think, 6 months, and I know about 300. Like, I know 500, but 300 I have perfect memorization of. I can recognize and recite them. I can write it. Amazing. Like, that exercise, that discipline of having to learn something each day, because in order to get better at something, you have to dedicate time to it. And learning a language is the perfect tool to teach you how to work at something that you might not see immediate results, but eventually, due to exponential gains, it will reap massive reward. And that reward that I want is to be able to comprehend written, spoken Japanese. But also, why do I want to learn Japanese? I had visited Japan towards the end of 2019 in our school tour. It was a quite fun trip. I think about around 10 days with your buddies, and it's quite fun in a foreign country. Also, Japan's a very unique country because it's been isolated, and it has a unique culture that hasn't been influenced by, well, it has Western influence. Like, the unique thing I find with Japan is it has inherently Eastern beliefs, but its technology is Western. Like, the combination of the East and the West coming together for amalgamation of a pretty, I think, advanced society such as Japan is amazing. and then going there, going to Tokyo, going to the massive cities, and getting lost amongst the crowds. Like that's the kind of feeling that I want, being lost, being disappearing amongst the busyness. Because people have to be somewhere. It's like there's a rumble and busyness to life living in a city. Still, there's the quiet countryside that I do appreciate. When we went to, I think, Nikko, it had some Buddhist temples as well. No, it had not Buddhist temples. It just had Japanese temples. It's quite amazing. Also, thirdly, why I want to learn Japanese, partly because of, I think anime had a really large influence. Anime is one of those mediums that I find more attached to than the Western medium, because the animation style, or perhaps something with the Japanese way of storytelling. At times, I feel like the characters are more well developed, the plot is more heavy, but particularly also because of the beautiful animation. The Japanese are known for hiding and shunning their emotions, so it's quite ironic that they're able to fully display emotion through their works. But having a deep appreciation for the animation influenced me wanting to learn the language so I don't have to read it with subtitles, but having that also in-depth knowledge of the language influences your perception. Culture influences language, and if you learn a language, then you get to reveal part of the culture that isn't shown through translation. But the ultimate goal is eventually I get to visit Japan again. Stay there, maybe live there for a bit, just depending on where my life path goes. It doesn't matter. I get to explore the whole world once I achieve this 10 grand a month goal of mine using online business. But yeah, it's just, I could picture myself in that lifestyle of enjoying the food, enjoying the city, of being able to communicate with other Japanese people, being in a different society than the one I grew up in. Like that kind of exploration kind of taps into my inner child in a way. Through my dedication and discipline of learning and immersing myself in the language. Because actually, in order to learn the language, you have to immerse yourself using comprehensible input. It's all about input. It's not about output. At the very start of learning a language, it's about input. If I have to give one piece of advice, it's all about input. Listen, read, even if you don't understand it. Because from the perspective of our English-speaking babies couldn't talk, they couldn't output, but they were listening, and then they mimic. That's how you learn a language. It's quite hard as you grow up, because in the pre-development stage, as a baby to a toddler, that's like the prime time to learn a language. But let it not be an excuse to not try and step your foot in the water learning a language. So I think learning a language is part of self-improvement, or be it learning any skill that requires amount of dedication, discipline, and work, because it is complex, makes it worthwhile doing, and ultimately the reward will be much greater.